There's something oddly interesting about multiplayer maps. They're not designed like a traditional leveler stage, there's no beginning or end. Instead, it's more like a playground, a jungle gym of obstacles and corridors that players freely navigate as they attempt to hunt each other down. And it's that playground-like mentality that comes from playing a game with other human players that interests me. Single-player games usually end at some point. They have finite goals to reach, maybe a story to enjoy. The fun comes from the overall experience, overcoming any obstacles and seeing the game's ending. But a multiplayer game like this is instead fun in the way that throwing a ball back and forth is fun. The activities that you take part in with other people, no matter how repetitive, are something that you enjoy doing. Now think about what happens when we remove those other people. This map now doesn't work, its purpose can no longer be met. You're alone, there's nothing you can really do here. You can't play catch by yourself. There's something oddly chilling about entering a space that's meant for multiple people to interact with each other, but while there's nobody there. Since there's that expectation, there's suddenly this loneliness that doesn't feel normal. These games just don't work like that. You need more than one person to play them, in the same way that a kid using a seesaw by himself just doesn't work. There's a reason we look at that image, and it represents this loneliness, this sad situation of desiring to be part of a group activity but nobody else shows up. And I'd imagine watching somebody play an arena shooter by themselves would look the same way, waiting for others to play against, but nobody logs in. That right there is the premise behind this indie game I found on itch called No Players Online. It's essentially a horror game where you're playing this arena shooter but there's nobody online to play with, so instead of shooting at other players, you'll just aimlessly wander around this empty map. And then, things start to get weird. Firstly, I'm going to say this right now, if what I've said so far has interested you, then I recommend you stop watching now and play the game blind. That's easily the best way to go into it, so check the description down below if you want to play it. Otherwise, this video completely spoils the entire game as it's fairly short and it's difficult to talk about it without showing the whole thing, so that's exactly what I'm going to have to do here. Okay, so No Players Online. It's a game that mysteriously popped up on itch.io in mid-November. It was advertised as a short horror flick, the idea being you find an old dusty VHS tape labeled Capture the Flag project footage, dated March 20th, 1986. So you download the game. It's just a simple exe file, but when you launch it, something unusual happens. Instead of opening a window or bringing you to the game, a VHS tape tumbles onto your desktop, and it sits there until you click on it. Oh wow, that is cool. You know, like just that little action it makes you do, putting in the VHS tape before the video plays. I really love that idea. And the execution here is so sleek and well done. So I guess the idea here is that you're watching this old VHS tape of somebody playing an old FPS game they made. However, you the player decides what actually happened in that tape by playing the game. For comparison's sake, I'd say it's fairly similar to the RE7 tapes. Like how in the games world, it's Ethan watching that tape, while in the context of it being a video game, the player also controls the character featured in said tape. And they do back it up with some pretty cool VCR effects. Playing this game really does look like you're watching some tape of a butt-ass old Quake clone from the 90s. That is one thing I really did not buy about the game though. It claims the game's from the 80s, but like, games kinda looked like this in the 80s. They didn't look like this until like the mid-90s, and VHS tapes were still a prominent thing in the 90s, so I'm a little confused as to why the developer chose the 80s instead of the 90s. I understand that's probably an aesthetic they enjoy and that's why they wanted to go for it, but it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when paired with this kind of game. But anyway, booting up the game prompts you to choose a server, some of which are down, some of which you can actually enter, but the thing is, nobody else is playing this game. It's just you wandering the map alone. You can walk around, fire your low poly gun, reload, walk around, fire your gun. Yeah, there's really not much to do here, huh? The only thing you can interact with here is completely useless. It's like a game of catch, but with nobody to catch the ball. You can still use it, but there isn't really much point without somebody on the other end of it. It recontextualizes a group activity into something weirdly dreadful and lonely. It wouldn't feel like this in a single-player game, but it's because this map is designed for more than one person. There's something that should be here, but isn't. Heightening that feeling of loneliness is the sound design. There is no music to accompany you. Instead, you're treated to the droning ambience of this howling wind and the muffled sounds of birds chirping. There's no other players to make sounds of gunshots and footsteps, so this is all you're gonna get. Interestingly enough, though, the objective of the game is not to shoot at other players, but rather to capture this flag. This is important, because it means a player can actually progress and win the game despite being all by themselves with no opposing team. And it's kind of a dreadful process this way. What usually consists of dodging fire, working with others, taking out other players, and fighting for the win becomes a simple and unexciting walk from one end of the map to the other. Once you take home that first flag is when things start to get strange. The lighting gets ever so slightly darker, and you'll start to hear a classical song being played from a record player, as if somebody lives here. I kind of began to feel threatened, like maybe there is somebody here. I started looking over my shoulder obsessively, like suddenly I was scared of something coming for me, even though in any other context that should be nothing to worry about. Yeah, of course there's other players coming for you, it's a shooter, that's the point of shooters. It's only in breaking the promise that you're going to be all alone that the idea of somebody else being there with you now becomes kind of threatening, especially when this presence doesn't exactly seem like your typical player. Ooh, bringing that flag back confirms your suspicion. Somebody else does in fact join the game, cementing the idea that yes, there is indeed someone or something else here, and you have no idea what. From then on, you'll start to be tailed by this creepy shadow. I think one of the first times I saw this thing, I shot at it just out of habit. There are a handful of times where you'll have a scripted encounter with it, your view being forced in a certain direction, and you'll have to sit there as it slowly comes towards you. This creature is genuinely terrifying. I really love how more and more of its features come into view step by step as it gets closer, and you barely get a look at its face before it's gone. Though I do think the scares would have been a little bit more impactful if the developer didn't script them so heavily. Being forced to stay put and have the game tell you to turn around and look at the scary thing, I don't know, I feel like if I stumbled upon it by my own means instead, I would have been caught much more off guard by it. After your second encounter with the thing, another player joins the game. This time, it's the game's developer, who explains it was made to try and resurrect his dead wife, her soul being trapped in the game, and he's trying to find a way to get her out. However, completing the game's objective, scoring 3 points and winning, will close the game, and if that happens, his wife's soul will be set free. At least that's what he tells you, and he does not want that. You are able to choose not to believe him and win the game anyway, despite all of his desperate pleading, and doing that will have him boot you out of the game, unable to join back in. Now, there's nothing left but to stare at this empty server list. Clicking on them does nothing now. Even restarting the game gets you nowhere. This is it. You can't play it anymore. So like anybody else, that's where I started to wonder, is that really it? Is it really just 5 minutes long, no credits, and questions that still remained unanswered? After getting no response from the game, I began to dig around. Maybe on the game's page there'll be a conversation that gets me somewhere or something. Taking a look at the first devlog, it mentions something about a combination of keys that sound like Konami? What? Well, freaking I don't know. Let's type in Konami. Oh, no, wait. Up, down, left, right, B, A. Wow, that did it. Okay, you can restart the game by using a Konami code. Weird, but alright. A second playthrough will look pretty much identical to the first one, but instead of winning the game, I decided to listen to John and exit out this time instead. I tried all the other servers, but there's no difference, they're all the same. Advancing to the dialogue again, you just get John chewing you out once more. This time, however, John spawns into the map as a physical eye you can see, watching you, making sure that you don't deliver that flag. Oh man, I wonder, what's gonna happen if we shoot this thing? Oh, what the hell? This is a cryptic video of somebody drawing arrows and a enter key. Okay, well, let's try typing in that button combination on the screen that follows. Nothing. Let's try again. Nothing? Okay, well, I guess I'll quit out and— oh, what's this? Entering this code puts this TXT file on your desktop. It seems like some generic programming babble, I don't know, but I do know it has to be a clue. Why else make getting this file so cryptic? Now this right here is where the game goes full-on ARG. Just to clarify, for those that don't know, ARG stands for Augmented Reality Game. It's basically anything that requires actions outside of the game in order to progress, like maybe looking through files on your computer, or maybe browsing a series of internet clues to find some sort of obscure way to advance. Going back to the devlog, they released a 100% completion save file, which doesn't make any sense at all. There's no progression in the game, there's no save file in the game. Is there? Maybe there is, and I missed it. I don't know. I don't really know what to do with this thing. I eventually found out that changing the file extension to JPEG or PNG or anything of the sort allows you to open it in a photo viewer, revealing that it's actually an image file. Okay, it's like a light weird, but notice there's a series of numbers at the bottom left, 11, 15, 19. This is a date. If you were following the ARG back when it was new, this was the date of one of the game's updates. The devlog from that date outlines how the game's been patched to allow players to see each other, but says something else about emailing somebody for the netcode because they don't know how to actually make it work or something like that. If you decide to actually email that address, you'll get back an automatic reply stating that he'll be out of the office due to personal grievances, followed by a link to an itch page where you can download another game called I. What do you know, there's that lamppost in that picture. This is a simple walking simulator with this really nice oil painting art style. You carry this leash that extends far out in front of you. Assuming there's a dog on the other end, it's so far away you can't even see it. After a little bit of walking, you'll eventually see a dock where... Oh, Jesus! Another VHS tape. Oh man, the way it transitions back to the desktop, that is flawless, dude. That is so freaking cool, wow. And this next tape is pretty freaking cryptic. It's some blurry footage of a forest while excerpts from a poem litter the screen. Well, going back to what John said about his wife, I'm assuming this poem's about a lost loved one. One phrase does stick out in particular though. Why do you blank me? Why do you blank me? That's the only real clue here I was able to find in the side game. Okay, why do you blank me? Well, I'm assuming she's dead, so it's like a ghost, right? So why do you haunt me? Let's try that. Haunt. H-A-U-N-T. What do we have here? Entering a 5-digit number here will play the corresponding sound effect, but there's really not that many before you start getting repeats. Kinda weird how they made it 5 digits instead of 2. Wait a minute, 5 digits? That TXT from before had a 5-digit number. 2, 5, 4, 6, 7. Oh my god, oh Jesus Christ, that was scared me. Removed mesh collision, what the hell does that mean? What this does is it removes this wall right here from the level, allowing you to walk off and fall downwards to the map. This brings you to a creepy chamber with a pod containing a flag and a computer terminal asking you for a password. This is the final part of the game, and the way you get this password is absolutely bonkers. I am shocked that anybody even got it. But I guess that is the beauty of ARGs after all. You know, they're very community driven, so there will be groups of people that are gonna figure these things out. So you might have noticed that the number of bullets you're able to fire before having to reload is totally inconsistent. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 3, but those differences in shots per clip become really drastic in this room. Sometimes you get a single bullet, and others you get up to 7 or 8. So, you know what that means? Yep, it is a code. The number of shots the gun fires each time spells out a real-world phone number that you can actually call. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the number to work. I'm not even sure if it's still available. I guess that is one problem with ARGs. If you're a bit late, some of the elements aren't gonna work anymore. These things do kinda have a bit of a shelf life. However, the message has been uploaded to Bandcamp, so you are still able to get to it. You're supposed to interpret a password from the Morse code. I really didn't quite understand this. Something to do with interpreting letters as numbers, and yeah, I don't get this at all. But I mean, other people have already figured this part out, so I'm just gonna Google this one. Alright, I'll type in the numbers, and hey, the capsule containing the flag opens up. Please merge with vessel to begin sold transfer? What? Sure, why not? Let's do it. What could possibly go wrong, right? The game will reboot, and every server is now mysteriously full. Clicking on any one will finally bring you to the credits. Well, that certainly was an adventure. Yeah, as far as ARGs go, that was pretty interesting. And they did put some serious effort into some of those outside elements too, like the devlog, the email. Oh man, the phone number, that's what really got me, man. Like, they really went the extra mile for that part. Now, as an interactive thing, what is this trying to say? What is it trying to be? Well, I'm sensing a distinct theme of meddling, I'd say, like the feeling of digging into things that maybe aren't your business, and then getting involved in a way that isn't exactly favorable. The game's ending features what I think was trapping your soul in the game and giving your body to the ghost of his wife. Not only are you trapped, but you kinda put his wife in a body she probably shouldn't have gone in. And even then, is it really that right to keep a soul trapped in purgatory as you find find a way to bring him back? Like, the morality behind his plan is certainly questionable. It's pretty likely he's pursuing something he's never going to achieve, and because of that, he's causing way more harm than good to the thing that he so dearly loves. Like walking a dog you're never going to catch up with. You can pretend all you want, but sometimes things that are gone are gone. Perhaps ending the game and setting her soul free really was the better ending after all. But of course, in achieving that ending, we felt so unsatisfied. We felt like there had to be more. We demanded more, and we kinda did get more. The player is pushed to dig by their own curiosities, and well, I guess there's a reason they say curiosity killed the cat. Maybe that's the theme here. Or perhaps it's more about knowing when to give up, knowing when you should just let things go. I guess it depends on whose perspective you decided to view it from, yours or John's, or even John's wife if you really want to think about it. Whatever the game's trying to get across, it at least does do it in some pretty damn interesting ways. I don't know if making it an ARG really helped to get those themes across. I guess maybe feeling like a real thing outside of the walls of fiction could help ground the themes in reality, or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe some people just like the mystery of it all. But even still, I can't help but to feel like there's so much more you can still do with the core concept here. The idea of playing a multiplayer map all by yourself and working that into a horror game, that is an awesome idea. But it seems like the developer here was more interested in this ARG than really exploring that premise. And in that way, I am a little bit disappointed with it, because it was that premise that made me really want to play this thing. And if that's all the hook is here for you, then you're really only going to get like a 5-minute pretty cool experience. The bulk of this thing is the ARG. And I do understand that ARGs have more limited appeal since they require a lot of unconventional work to solve. It's the sort of thing that I find is more so enjoyed by communities rather than individuals. In fact, once I realized this was an ARG, I almost decided not to do this video. But there was a lot of interesting material here, so I am glad I decided to pry further instead of just canning it and moving on to something different. If this sort of thing interests you, I hope you enjoyed learning about this weird little project. If you'd like to play the game for yourself, and who knows, maybe find some stuff that I didn't, I'll have a link to it down below. It's name your price on itch, so it is free to play, but you are able to throw the developers something if you'd like to support them. Man, No Players Online was really different than what I was expecting, and it certainly left me wanting a fully realized version of what I thought I was getting myself into, but even still, I do think it would also be unfair to say the game has shortcomings, since I do think the game achieves what it's actually going for just fine. It's still a really cool thing, so while it's not really what I was hoping for, it's still something I appreciate all the same. No Players Online. Go check it out.
I found this creepy VHS tape at a pawn shop, so I bought it, and the label was scratched off, and it said "Do not play" on it. So I got my VCR out of my dad's garage, and I plugged it into my television. And when I put in the VHS tape, I died. Also, you can follow me on Twitter.